In this video right here, I'm going to go through the fundamental essentials that you need to understand to create a 3D architectural diagram. I'm going to be going through ArchiCAD, Twinmotion, Photoshop, and Illustrator to create this one simple diagram. It is going to be an overarching overall tutorial on all four programs to make sure you're able to do this with your very own project. What's going on, guys? My name's David Tomic and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, firstly, thank you so much for joining me. On this channel, we talk about architecture and technology. If that's something that interests you, make sure you smash that subscribe button to tune in to any future video. Today, we're talking about creating architectural 3D diagrams. Now, you may have seen these on Instagram, on TikTok, or somewhere potentially in your studio where you've seen somebody do it better. Today, I'm going to show you the fundamental basics of how you can master 3D architectural diagrams and showcase your skills in whatever project comes next. Now, in this video, I'm assuming that you already have an architectural model built up in ArchiCAD that you can use for this tutorial. I'm not going to be going through ArchiCAD so much in this video. I have done plenty of ArchiCAD tutorials, so feel free to tune into those if you're looking for an ArchiCAD tutorial. Today, we're taking it to that next level. There's no messing around today, so let's turn around to these two screens behind me and get on with the tutorial. So the ArchiCAD model that I have here open in front of me will be the fundamental basics of what we're talking about today. This ArchiCAD model, I actually created a tutorial on YouTube, so if you want to go and check it out, I'll leave a link down below so you can go back and follow it. The tutorial for this one was predominantly focusing on this cladding system here and the actual overall design of the building as well. So what is so unique about this cladding is it actually wraps all the way around, same wall, same roof system with completely hidden secret gutter along the main pitch of the roof. Today, we're not focusing on the architecture or the ArchiCAD side, we're focusing on creating a 3D architectural diagram. By using the fundamental basics of this building block, I want you to be able to go home and apply this basically to any project that you're working on and create 3D architectural diagrams specific for your project. Now, before we take it into Twinmotion, we want to make sure that our mesh is completely off. That is critical to this and saves so much time. Now, to transition this into Twinmotion, we can either go File, Save As, a Twinmotion file, or if you've installed a plugin, simply Twinmotion Direct Link. Let's call this a brand new project, okay, let it synchronize. As you can see, that's opened up relatively quickly in Twinmotion, and our settings are half decent straight out of Twinmotion, which is why I like using the system. What we are going to do is just manipulate a couple of these settings to create this as best as we can in an actual visualization. So let's start by going Materials, Wood, and I'm going to drag this onto the decking here so we have a nice dark timber deck. Then I'm going to go back to my metal, change my brushed aluminium to the whole house, adjust the color to something a little bit darker, not too dark, so we can still see the materiality and the textures, somewhere of a dark gunmetal gray. Finally, I'm going to come across into my glass and go reflective glass so we can see the reflection of basically nothing because we are not really reflecting too much. What I'm going to do is change the foundational base of this model. I'm simply just going to go into ground, nature, and change that to grass too, so we have some sort of natural reflection on the whole project. I'm going to scale that up a little bit too much because we're going to be cutting it out, so it isn't really required to be realistic. And I'm also going to increase the height of it so we just start to trim into our decking. Next, we're going to come across to our settings and our location. Because I am in Perth, Western Australia, I'm going to type in Perth, use my current location and change this to how I best see fit. So if we want to actually make this a little bit nicer, I'm just going to adjust the north point more so than anything. So adjusting it to a really good location so we can see all of our details. I'm going to be focusing on something like an axonometric here, which means I'm going to be wanting a north point that showcases our shadows, showcases how the building works, and makes it look really nice. The best for me, I believe, is actually pointing backwards. It gives us some depth, it gives us some perception, and we are able to see most of our projects. Next, we're going to come into our background, change the city to absolutely nothing because we don't really care about the background at all. And then we're going to go into media, image, click our first image and enter into the more options. This is where it's critically important to get those diagrams looking really, really nice. We're going to come into our camera settings and drag that field of view all the way to the base. Pressing WSAD, we're going to fly out, zoom out, and come up into our isometric view. So as you can see now, we've positioned this model central to our image and we've created an isometric view, which gives us the best diagrammatic view possible, in my personal opinion at least. Next, I'm going to come back into my image one and my image and then refresh my settings entirely so I don't have to see what I was seeing before. I'm going to try center that a little bit more and zoom in a little bit more so I see pretty much as much of my building as I possibly can without going overboard. So I think now that corner's in the frame. I'm going to refresh that so we have the clearest image of our project possible. Now, before we leave this image and before we leave Twinmotion, I do want to throw in a couple people into this space so we actually get something interesting happening in the actual diagram. So I'll throw a little man here. I'll throw a lady as well somewhere next to him. Orientate so they look like they're talking. Maybe also some sort of animal, maybe a little puppy dog next to them. Looks like they're having a very pleasant conversation. And then finally, I might also introduce one small tree in the background of this image. Now, because I have all of this grass and I want to cut that out, that tree is not going to stand out at all and it's going to be a nightmare to cut out in Photoshop. So what I'm going to go into my leaf tint and simply drag that down to a much, much darker green, almost black. That way, when we actually have to cut it out in Photoshop, we can let Photoshop do most of the work for us. What might also be nice is potentially a small little table and chairs on the outside. So let's just go home, living room, tables, find a small little outdoor setting that will provide a small pop of color, put it in the shadows so it doesn't overly reflect and look too powerful in the image. And that's pretty much all I need to do. Now, before we export this image, one fundamental basic that you want to keep in mind is you want to export this to the highest possible settings your computer can handle. So if we go into image one more, come across the format and change this here from full HD to at least 4K. You can bump that up to 8K, 16K, whatever your computer can handle. For the purposes of this, I'm simply just going to showcase 4K. We're going to come to export down the bottom, export, click on the image we want and select that, directly exporting to our desktop. Now I'm quickly going to put this into Lightroom so we can adjust those colors, make them look vibrant, make them pop, make them look fantastic like we've exported it out of a really high-end rendering software. And then we're going to take it into Photoshop. I'm going to let this export. I'll see you in about 2 seconds, but for me, it's probably going to be about 2 minutes. Now, before we go on to the next steps, I just wanted to quickly point out the links down below. There are a couple incredible digital downloads and assets for you guys, including construction checklists and ArchiCAD title blocks. There is also a phenomenal Discord chat, which is completely free to join for all architects, architecture students, or anybody in the profession. So far, it is growing phenomenally well and everybody in that group is helping each other out. Constant questions are being asked and people are able to resolve them. So I'm really, really happy with how that little Discord chat is growing and how everybody is interacting in it. If you want a copy of any of the tutorial files that I make on YouTube, there is a Patreon link down below where you can subscribe as a Patreon Legend level member and gain access to all the files through the Discord chat. If any of those interest you, make sure you check out the links down below and don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button to help this video with the YouTube algorithm so I can make sure I keep helping people just like you better themselves as architects, designers, or anything in between. All right, so I've dragged that 4K image that I've exported out of Twinmotion directly into Lightroom so we can start messing with these settings. If we come across to our Develop tab up the top, we can see we have a number of different settings here on the side. Now, you can do it the slow way and go through and individually adjust everything, or personally, I've created a series of Twinmotion presets that are available in the digital downloads link below that you can quickly download and just apply those filters, adjust as you see fit. So if we scroll through these, I have all the different seasons to be able to give you a different look for what you might be looking for. And of course, I have an internal and an external because Twinmotion changes the colors so much. So if we look at the autumn, the spring, the summer, and the winter different presets, personally, I think the winter preset external is my absolute favorite for this one. And all I'm gonna do is just adjust the shadows that little bit so we can see our furniture in the shade. Next, all I have to do is right click, scroll up to edit in Adobe Photoshop 2021. You're gonna get this message pop up here, edit with a copy of Lightroom adjustments, and you just hit edit. It'll automatically import that into Photoshop. So now we have Photoshop open. What we're gonna do is simply come across here to our polygonal lasso tool. If you don't see this polygonal lasso tool, click and hold on that third icon down to come to your polygonal lasso tool. What we're gonna do now is simply go around this building, clicking, dragging, and cutting out all the shapes. We're probably gonna click quickly around that tree and then let Photoshop do the rest. So by holding Alt on your keyboard and scrolling on your keyboard, you can zoom in as much as you need to start actually cutting out. So by clicking once, dragging all the way up, and then clicking on our shadows, I do want to keep them personally. I think it will make this image look so much better. We're going to be able to cut this entire building out. Now I'm going to go through and click all the way around this image, show you what I've selected, so you don't have to watch me click a million times, and be back in 2 seconds. Okay, so what I've done now is gone around, selected all of my shadows, selected the building, cropped around this tree quickly, and selected the main elements of our building. Next, I'm gonna click Control, Shift, and I to invert that selection and tap the delete button. All of a sudden, very quickly, we've created a PNG with the background cut out. By pressing Control D, I'm gonna deselect everything, zoom in to this tree, and then I'm going to press my W key or the icon just below to select my magic wand. Again, like before, if you don't get the magic wand, click and hold and you will have a variety of different selections. Next, I'm going to increase my tolerance to about 50 and start clicking a few sections of this grass here. Then I'm going to reduce my tolerance down to 1, go select similar, and press the delete button. Next, we're gonna go File, Save As, save that to our desktop. We're just gonna simply save that, save a copy as probably a PNG because we don't wanna see that background, and we're gonna go diagram raw. So we know what we're looking for. I'm gonna keep it large so we have a lot of that data. Click OK. With that image open in Illustrator, we can start adjusting and creating our actual diagrammatic details. So first of all, I'm gonna come into the layers setting. I'm gonna center this image perfectly in the center of that page, lock it so we can't touch that anymore, and start a new layer. This is gonna be our shadows, and next is gonna be our diagrams. So let's start working on our shadow details. If we close that layers panel, select P for our pen tool and zoom in to our shadows. What I'm gonna simply do is actually copy the sun that we created and create a very nice, dark, rich, diagrammatic shadow. So there I've gone around, I've traced that shadow, created it nice, black and rich. It's probably too black for this image because most of that image is quite dark, so I might lift it to about 50% and create a 50% dark gray shadow that we can utilize. Next, I'm going to come back into my layer setting, lock those shadows because that's the only shadows we're working with, go into my diagrams and start messing around with what is the fundamental principles of this architectural 3D diagram. So again, we want to utilize that pen tool, we want to work on a number of different colors. So let's start with yellow for the sun and swap it around so we have our stroke. In this instance, you'll see that the sun path will do something along these lines here. So if I finish my diagram like that, you can see that line is way too thin. Let's adjust that to about 20. Again, it didn't take into account what I was saying before with those details, so we're going to keep adjusting that till we're happy. I think 30 points is very nice. We have that sun sweeping line across. Then I'm simply just going to drag it a little bit away from our actual image. Next, I'm going to go ahead and create a very simple sun by using the star tool and filling that entirely in yellow, rotating it ever so slightly and placing it at the end of our little stroke. So now we see our sunrise, our sunset path, we see that path. Next, we're gonna hit that P button again, change our colors across to a stroke. Let's go to green for this instance. Actually, let's go to blue because we're gonna represent the ventilation of this building and how it works. Test out what this might look like and just create a little bit of a curvy line there. It's very thin. We're gonna make that about 20 points so we can see it. Again, I wanna make it nice and flowy, very similar to the sun path. Next, what we might be taking into consideration is the actual materiality of the fundamentals of this project. So if we click P again, let's go to a nice black texture. We're gonna leave it as a very simple thin line. And let's start by zooming into this roof over here. So if I zoom in, let's say I click on that roof, start creating a curved line and extending that out. Clicking on that line once more, going to our stroke and changing our arrowhead. Oh, not that one, changing this arrowhead. I still don't like how thick that line is. Let's change that to about a 2 and reduce that back to 100% so we have a nice thin line. Now we have our first arrowhead, which is going to explain the materiality. We're going to create a few more here so we can continue to explain what this project is about. Finally, we just want to go across to our text tool, start typing in what these elements actually are. So for example, this is max line cladding. It is way too small. Let's bump that up to about 40 points so it can actually be seen, especially if you're posting this on Instagram. Probably a little bit too big. Let's go back to 30 points. Just adjust this to whatever size you think works really well for you. And I'm just gonna repeat that for a couple other elements. If you wanted to make it even cooler and make it stand out even more, if you haven't already noticed, I'm a big fan of black. So what we do is change all our black and invert that image entirely so it stands out on this beautiful black presentation board. Overall, that is everything you need to know from ArchiCAD, Twinmotion, into Lightroom, then to Photoshop and Illustrator. 5 programs absolutely essential to any architect creating good 3D diagrams. Anyway, that's all for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something new that you hadn't known before. If you did, make sure you smash that subscribe button down below, and just for me, make sure you hit that like button. Believe it or not, the like button in conjunction with maybe a cheeky little comment down below will help this video so much with the algorithm. The algorithm is ever changing, but we're slowly making sure that these videos get seen by more and more people every single time I post. So I truly appreciate all of you guys who have smashed the like button and the subscribe button in all of my videos. And like always, I'll see you next Monday.